we always want to meet a certain target or certain numbers every month. And the currency that I realized through this couple of months is the currency of kindness that everyone has, helping one another through it all.
I'm Dani Valent, and this is Dirty Linen, the podcast that takes the issues the hospitality industry finds hard to air in public and shakes them all about. Denise Hung is an international student in lockdown in Kingsville in Melbourne's western suburbs. I met her through the soup project that I'm doing with Attica. I dropped off some soup and groceries and sent her money to buy a Myki card. Denise is so much more than an international student sitting in an apartment waiting for someone to bring her soup. She's an incredible person with so many skills, such an interesting backstory, and I just think she's an amazing person to bring a different perspective on life in lockdown and the challenges and opportunities in the hospitality industry in general. So thank you so much, Denise, for being part of Dirty Linen.
Thanks, Dani, for having me here this morning.
I think you've got such an interesting take on the current situation and, the problems and possible solutions for people that work in hospitality. So I know it's a big thing to say. Tell me a little bit about yourself, because there is so much to say, but I'll let you give it a go.
I will try. I think you gave a really good summary of how I arrived in Melbourne. I moved to Melbourne 2 years ago to further my studies. So I initially was studying naturopathy and I swapped to Chinese medicine. But before that, I was a pastry cook back in Malaysia and Singapore. And prior to that, I had my training in pastry in Orlando, Florida, at what's previously known as the Le Cordon Bleu. So I moved around in the States, and prior to that, I was also studying psychology in the UK. So throughout that whole journey, the hospitality and food and beverage business has always been the backbone of how I finance myself through university and through life. And it's always been there for me.
So I know that you were working at a local cafe near where you live in the western suburbs, but I guess lockdown has put a temporary pause to that. You were also doing something else with chefs and hospitality workers. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so prior to the lockdown, I was teaching chefs yoga and meditation in the city, in the CBD area in Melbourne. And when the lockdown happened, everyone was pretty tight with their budget. So obviously I was the first one out of the budget because they had to pay suppliers and full-time staff, and I was not considered as priority. But to my surprise, chefs came together and helped me back and say, no, you really need this class, even though the restaurant wouldn't pay for it, but they really needed a class. And I guess without COVID or isolation, I wouldn't have known the impact that I had on the chefs and the hospitality crew. I had chefs come up to me and tell me, thank you so much for all your time. I have struggled throughout the year with my own stress and anxiety and in just general depression of, I guess, what you face in the high intense environment, and introducing yoga to their life was a way to help themselves manage this mental stress. And they find being on the mat in that four corners and within that center space, gave them the capacity to just breathe and be themselves and not have all this, I guess, identity or roles as being as a chef or having that pressure. So that was what I was doing before that.
What do you think it is about yoga that resonates particularly with chefs? Why does it such an impact on them?
I think just the capacity to just sit in a space and just breathe. And, just yoga and meditation and the movement of the body. And it's so hard to not move as a chef because you're always standing, you're always in this very physical, high intensity place. And, the pressure is so high. And then coming down to a space where it's quiet and, still, there's a lot of things that comes out in the stillness. And as we can see right now in the isolation, everyone's really frustrated staying indoor because they can't move, they can't do things. But when there's stillness, there's also truth. So they kind of sit back and reflect on themselves. What did I do through the day? Or what is my purpose of doing this? And also, why am I here to cook or even serve? Not just chefs as well as this front of the house crew. And think just the time to reflect on the day. There's also part of yoga, which is physical, and you kind of understand your body a lot more. And your physical body holds a lot of pain and trauma sometimes without realizing. And as chefs, we always have injuries. And for me personally, I struggle with like a lot of back injuries in my younger days, working 60 to 80 hours or even more. And wrist injuries because of holding the knives or the whisk. So all that kind of pain and trauma shows up when you are still at the end of the day. And yeah.
So do you think that we could think about isolation or lockdown as one long yoga class?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think this is an opportunity to kind of reflect and ask yourself, why am I doing, or what have I been doing for the last couple of years? What is the purpose of working in this restaurant or in this cafe? What's the purpose of my role as a barista or as a sous chef or a pastry cook or even a dishy, Yeah.
Have you encountered people in the restaurants that I know the Inner West is a really tight community. Have you talked to people that work in those places that are having time and headspace to think about those things?
In the Inner West in Melbourne, a lot of chefs are struggling with the finance situation, obviously, but also not able to feed the wider community. I think the biggest stress they face is how to pay their staff and how to keep everyone. But it also gives them an opportunity to ask, what can I do with my space? I know a really good restaurant down the road turned their restaurant into a bakery, and the chef also lived around the corner from me. I was like, I really always wanted a bakery. This is my opportunity because you don't really have to confine your customers in a space. They can just take the bread and go away, and the community came together, and you're fundamentally still feeding people, and that's what you do anyway. So you're just feeding people through another way, and you're utilizing your other skills that perhaps you honored before, but you didn't know that it was still there, and you could teach your staffs as well. At this time, it's important to be resilient and versatile with your talents. Yeah.
I mean, I think that sounds really good, and it is so nice to find something within yourself that you can honour in a new way through adversity. But the financial stress and that stress of a business that's on the precipice, that is so real as well. I mean, do you have any strategies that people can use to help them through that?
I think the community I am in, it's very fortunate. We have, the government is supporting hospitality, and it's great. Everyone's reaching out to one another for help. There's your project is great, helping the hospitality crew and international students as well, or even visa holders, how we can use this ability to help one another. And currency and finances, I guess, it's really hard topic to talk about because we always want to know, we always want to meet a certain target or certain numbers every month. And the currency that I realized through this couple of months is the currency of kindness that everyone has, helping one another through it all. I mean, if you just ask and reach out and be like, I really need help in this situation. What can I do? What is important to me? Really ask yourself as a business, why are we here? What can we cut down on, and what is really, really essential? What is not essential? And is what your value of running this business is for? Is it to feed people? Is it, really to be part of this community? Yeah, I think the tools that I could really advise, I guess, anyone in this situation is to look beyond, the stress levels, and also take a step back and ask yourself what is really crucial at this moment. I mean, there's so many things to think about running a restaurant. There's so many values that we want to in place through the resources that we have, the relationship that we build with our suppliers and purveyors. I mean, we all want to hold that very dear to our heart, but it's also that conviviality of community that we want to have within our space. And it's really nice to see my regular customers come together and support, the cafes and restaurant around my area as well. And you see really how everyone's so passionate to keep everyone happy.
There's so much humility and vulnerability in what you're saying, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there is a lot that we could really learn from this situation. And everyone is really boggled down with what they don't have. And I think it's nice to look at what we have instead of kind of trying to pinpoint what was it previously before, and take this opportunity as, a growing spurt. I often tell people that COVID-19 sometimes it's the best thing that happens in my life, and people take a step back and be like, "Are you kidding me?" But I tell them it is, because I wouldn't have had the opportunity to talk to you or meet different people, and be very grateful for a cup of coffee from a cafe, or the kindness that I receive from my friends, and knowing how important health is. I mean, I've always practiced yoga and meditation throughout my 10 years of being in hospitality. And I know that health is very important, but I think even so now, because, of the situation, we do take it for granted that we have forever to live and the freedom to do anything. But I think having all this restriction make us realize the value of the impact, and just having what we have, the necessities.
Have you seen that when you've been working at the cafe, working front of house as you've been doing? Have you seen your customers appreciate what you're able to give them in a different way?
Yeah, I have seen a lot of that. Instead of going, "Oh, thank you for this cup of coffee," they look at you in the eye and say, "Thank you for this cup of coffee," with a whole sincerity, because this is perhaps their only way to get out of the house is taking, a short walk to the cafe around the corner. And I guess a lot of them are also cooking from home, so they didn't realize how hard is it to make a simple dish. Some of them have never cooked before, and they just take it for granted, like, "Oh, this is just a toast and poached eggs." But if you really do it every day, and you do the cleaning as well, and you sauce for it, then you realize it's an easy task, but to do it well, it takes a long time to honor. So yeah, I've seen a lot of changes around my area with my customers, and I think they really take the time and effort to be really grateful for us being open for takeaways. And I've seen some of my customers struggle as well. I think struggling financially, because I'm not the only one who lost all of my jobs and had this casual job. So I've seen them struggling. And it's also, as a community, I feel at the end of the day, if I have a little bit extra, I knock on their doors and, I give them groceries, or if there's leftovers, and check in on them, ask them how are they. I think that's essentially coming together, not just as a cafe or a restaurant and just be there to feed people, but to really ask, how are you doing. I think that's how growing is like.
So I know that you're a real believer in the various powers that food can have, and the giving of food, the cooking of food. Can you talk about your philosophy around the power of food?
Oh, wow. Food is such an innate, I guess, source of energy for me. I feel that as a cook, a home cook, or even a cook in a cafe or restaurant feeding people, there's that capacity to really give out love and care through the way we cook, not just from how we feed people, from how we mentor others to, or teach others, or pass this dish to someone and go, here's the dish, and then put it on a plate for a customer. I think that whole journey has a sense of purpose of itself, and how you carry that out is also very important. And I think you could often feel where there's stress in the kitchen and the food comes out, it's perfect, it's wonderful, and the chefs put really hard work for it. And at the end of the day, if you really look at it, sometimes you could feel, I guess, the heaviness of it, of that high intensity. And sometimes you don't feel it because, the restaurant, the cafe itself has this very enclosed area that you don't see the kitchen, but you can see the stress levels from the staffs as well. And you could often feel in a space already. You walk in and you kind of look at the ambience and be like, oh, this is a really nice space to work at, isn't it? Everyone's really happy. The food's really nice. That's just kind of like, oh, you kind of sit back. But if you're a high intensity area, you can really feel how food becomes like really intense as well. And I think that's important as diners as well, when you walk in and you see that and how the seriousness of it all. But at the end of the day, food is just food. You are there to nourish one another. That's how I came about loving to feed people with Chinese medicine and naturopathy. Because at the end of the day, I love to feed people. That's something that I have in my culture. We come together every evening and we feed one another.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in traditional Chinese medicine, there's so much around the power of food as medicine. I mean, do you draw a line between that sort of medicinal properties of some ingredients, or just like a yummy bowl of soup or a stew?
There is a line. There's a very fine line, depending, I guess, how ill you are. And they do take the importance of food, and certain ingredients and certain herbs and certain berries, I guess, and spices as well. But not just Chinese medicine. I'm also quite passionate about Ayurvedic, and even in Melbourne, I'm learning about the Aboriginal culture and how they use their local ingredients to kind of heal themselves. I think it's been forgotten, and we don't ask ourselves, how do we feed ourselves with the land? And it's really, really easy to take a different culture in and be really enticed by the media of what's new and what's the trendy medicine out there, of a natural way of life, because how marketing have placed it out. But often we have to take a step back and ask, okay, what does the land offer? I mean, I'm studying Chinese medicine in Melbourne, and I'm fortunate enough to have all these ingredients and this huge Asian society in this area. But I also ask myself often, what does the land want to feed me? And just looking at the eucalyptus and the water seed, and going down to the Great Ocean Road, the peninsula, looking at the coast and the saltbush, and there's all this really interesting, to me, really different ingredients. And I want to learn what is natural here as well, and what do they use to feed people. So it's really nice to learn. It's really interesting.
I think Australia and Melbourne is so lucky to have you here, bringing that energy and curiosity and intelligence to all these different aspects of our food culture. I really am so excited. Do you see your future here in Melbourne?
Oh yes, I definitely do see my future here in Melbourne, and a certain sustainability and longevity here. There's just so much to learn from everyone. I think that's the beauty about living in Melbourne is that there's the Asian side, but there's also the Greek Italian side, and there's always the Anglo-Saxon. And I lived in UK before, so I understand that, and I can see a slight change coming over right now with what's happening with the isolation, how I've been learning about everyone's different way of life and how we could slowly adapt to the changes. And there's this beautiful impermanence of how, we can grow better as a community from where we are.
So I'm going to ask you something. I haven't given you any warning, but I reckon there'll be a lot of people listening to this that will be very inspired and curious about the things that you're able to teach people. So I just wonder, could you give us a little breathing exercise? Just give people the opportunity to punctuate their day, find a little bit of space, and give us some good breathing work.
Yeah, definitely. We could do a couple of minutes of breathing work. So wherever you are listening to us right now, just come to a slow, gentle seat, or if you're standing, just ground your feet into the earth. So if you're standing right now, try to feel into your big toe, both of your big toes, and your pinky toes as well. Just have a sense. And slowly coming to the arches of your feet and to your ankles. Slowly bend your knees, just very gentle, micro bending them. Standing still. Take an inhale and really ground your feet very so slightly. To exhale, I want you to stay right there, but lengthen up your neck. Now, if you're sitting down, you can cross your legs. Or if you're on your feet, you can bend your knees. Take a long inhalation in, really suck into your belly. But let your belly button stay right there, and you exhale, really just gently drop your shoulders. Only breathing through your nose. Take an inhalation in through both of your nostrils. And to exhale very gently through your nostrils. Ground your feet if you're standing. Really gently loosen up your belly button if you're sitting. Inhale again through your nose. And slow exhale, gently drop your shoulders. And next inhalation, inhale through the back of your spine into your shoulders, lengthen up your crown. Imagine a long string pulling the crown of your head into the space beyond. Feeling tall. And to exhale, maintaining that length in your neck, but just very gently drop your shoulders down. Inhale again through your chest. Exhale through your nose. Inhale through your nose, maintaining that length through the crown of your head. Easy exhale, drop your shoulders. 2 more breaths at your own pace. The next exhalation, slowly, gently come back to the space in your belly button. And if you can, take your palms together and give it a nice little rub if your eyes still closed. Just rub your hands, creating some warmth. And take your palms and cup your eyes. And feel the warmth of your palms in your eye socket. Very gently take a long breath in again with your palms still in your eyes still closed. As you exhale, drop your palms. Slowly open up your eyes.
Wow. You're amazing. You're amazing. I can't believe you just did that and took me into another space. And I open my eyes and I can see these apples and lemons and oranges in a bowl, and they are glowing. They look such clear, intense outlines. I can see, raindrops on the branches outside. And everything just has a little bit of an extra glow and looks a bit more 3D. So thank you so much for doing that on the spur of the moment and taking us into a different zone and letting us come back out the other side a little bit better and calmer and more grounded. Denise, I think you're amazing. I am so glad that coronavirus has allowed us to meet. So I know that people are going through some super hard times, and it's not everything about it is good, that's for sure, but there are good things to appreciate along the way, and thank you for drawing our attention to them.
Thank you for having me, Dani. I'm really glad I shined some spur of the moment light and droplets to your life today.
You certainly did. All right, we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Sure, you take care.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.